Hey folks, today I'd like to talk about a celebrity couple, Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith. For some time they're kind of billed as a pretty open-minded, perhaps something close to an open marriage couple in Hollywood. And there was a little magic, I guess, about all that. But just quite recently, maybe a week or two ago, Jada Pinkett Smith made a public announcement, something to the effect that, she and Will have not been, quote unquote, together for about 7 years. And, I haven't followed up on the rest of that story to see what the prognosis is for their relationship. But, obviously making a statement like that is a bit of you know, an admission that things are not entirely rosy in that particular marriage. So, be that as it may, couples go through rough periods early, in the middle, and in the late stages of the relationship. And, this is part of life. My teacher's guru once said that, a long-term relationship is, equivalent to a profound sadhana, a spiritual discipline or undertaking. And, so it must seem for some people. And credit to those who persevere. And, we also have to be kind with those who say, well, I give up, I'm going to move on. Anyway, without sort of trying to guess which way this is going to go, I wanted to take a few minutes just to look at the horoscopes of these two and to see, within those horoscopes, do we see the seeds of, discontent with, the marital regime itself, marriage and monogamy, or, between two specific people. In either one or both circumstances can prevail. And well, let's have a look and see what we see in that regard. Okay, so here are the horoscopes in question. So this is the horoscope of Will Smith, born 25th of September 1968, 9:47 p.m. Philadelphia. So, before we discuss compatibility, let's just take a look at the horoscope to see whether it promises, success in marriage. So, Bhava Vichara, the analysis of the seventh house. So we look at the seventh house, that's Scorpio. There is no planet there, but the Lord is Mars. And Mars is in the fourth house. That's a positive house. It's associated with Jupiter, benefic, and that's the only influence upon it. So that's relatively positive. Furthermore, Mars aspects its own sign, Scorpio, in the seventh. And that too is positive. And there is no other planet or graha here that influences the seventh house. All well and good. The last thing to do, aside from Lord, aside from the house itself, we look at the Karaka. The Karaka for relationships is Venus. So here, Venus is strong in its own sign, but it does occupy the sixth house. Now, the sixth house is, problematic because it is the Dushtana, and it's also a Dushtana relative to the seventh house itself. So, in other words, the sixth is a Dushtana, but the sixth is also the 12th from the seventh. So, therein lies a little bit of an issue. So, some potential problems vis-a-vis relationship there. The other thing that we might note about Will Smith's chart is this is, it's got a number of passion combos. So as I discuss, in great length in my most recent book, Kama Yoga, the astrology of love, marriage, and relationships, we're looking for combinations that involve, Moon and Venus coupled with Mars or Saturn or the Rahu Ketu axis, and, to generate a bit of heat. So here we have an instance of both Venus and Moon are found together. And both Venus and Moon are in mutual opposition, in mutual aspect to Saturn. Now, one of the keys to, heightened activity, I guess, in the love, relationship, sexuality dynamic is when any or all of these planets are in what we call exaggerated condition, whether they're somewhere above or below the baseline of their normal condition. So Venus is we consider normal because it's its own sign, and that's a good thing. But the moon is dark. It's just a couple of tithys away from the sun. Therefore, just a little sliver. So a dark moon is considered, an exaggerated state moon. But on the other end of this pattern, the mutual opposition, here we have Saturn. Saturn is doubly exaggerated. One, Saturn is debilitated in Aries. Number two, Saturn is retrograde. So it's weak by virtue of debilitation. It's strong by virtue of brightness. So both of those are exaggerated states. Meanwhile, it's in the 12th house, the so-called pleasures of the bed. So this Moon-Venus pair, the two good girls of the zodiac, are in mutual aspect with Saturn, one of the bad boys, and it is in exaggerated condition, twice so, and Moon is, once so. So this is a very potent sort of passion combination. And it's got the potential to, disrupt a relationship because Venus and Moon occupy Adhisthana, specifically the sixth, which, as I say, is effectively for relationships a double Adhisthana. Okay, that is the situation for Will Smith. Now let's have a look at Jada. So she has a Scorpio ascendant, and the seventh house then is Venus. Seventh house is Taurus. The Lord is Venus. So where's the Lord? Venus, the Lord of the seventh, has gone to a positive house. That's the 11th. That's good. But Venus is there debilitated. If you look at the degree range, it's only 6 degrees away from the sun. So we would call that also moderately combust. So the seventh Lord, although gone to a positive bhava, the 11th, it is effectively twice weakened, once by debilitation and once by moderate combustion. Then what else is going on vis-a-vis the seventh house? Well, it is occupied by Saturn. That is the malefic. That's, potentially troublesome. But at the same time, that is stabilized by the aspect of Jupiter, a benefic. And this Jupiter has strength with Digbala in the first house. Mind you, Saturn has strength with Digbala in the seventh house. So, this is a bit of a wash. Malefic in the seventh, and yet stabilized by a benefic. So we've looked at the Lord of the seventh. We've looked at the occupants and the aspects upon the seventh. There are no other. Lastly, we go to the Karaka. Well, then we're back to Venus again, and we're going to double up on that effect of Venus because in this instance, it is both Lord of the seventh and it is also the generic Karaka for the seventh. So that, raises more issues for her in terms of potential, difficulties in relationship. Now, do any passion combos exist here? We look at the moon. It is aspected by Mars, but there is no sambandha here. It's not a mutual aspect, and it's not an aspect between two grahas where one is the dispositor of the other. So this is pretty lightweight affliction. And otherwise, the moon is with Mercury, a benefic. What about Venus? Venus is with the sun. That's, a mild malefic, but more to the point, it is neither Mars nor Saturn nor Rahu Ketu, which is what we might expect to see, in the context of a passion combination. So she is not driven by passion to the same degree that her husband is. Moreover, she's got Jupiter in the first house. Jupiter is, the epitome of dharma, proper behavior, good conduct. Jupiter is the lord of the fifth house, one of the other dharma houses. And so Jupiter's influence tends to, not oblige her, but, guide her into proper behavior. Whereas, her husband Will is not under the same sort of influence. Incidentally, back to his horoscope briefly, we saw that Mars, the lord of the seventh, is in the fourth house. That's good. In an ordinary condition, it's, not in its own or exalted or debilitated sign there, but it is with Jupiter. And that's good in one respect because Jupiter is, benign, a benefic. But Jupiter is also the lord of Dvishva Bhava Rashis, Sagittarius and Pisces. So you might think of it as the lord of plenty, the lord of abundance, the lord of opportunity. And what this implies in his horoscope is opportunity for relationships. The lord of the seventh, Mars, is with Jupiter, the lord of opportunity and abundance. Therein lies the temptation. So then, he may be tormented by opportunity and find it difficult to resist. Whereas Jada, with this sort of the influence of Saturn, kind of acts as a governor or a check or a control on the abundance of relationships. It restricts them to some degree. And Jupiter in the first house, imbues the individual with some sort of proper conduct. So Jada has said that, since 7 years, they have not been been together. Euphemistically, what does that mean? They haven't had sex in that period of time, or they're just no longer thinking of each other as a couple. If we look back, we see that Will was at the time running K2 Saturn in 2016, just going back 7 years. So we look at the horoscope and say, well, what does that mean? K2 in the horoscope, will give results, in his horoscope for the sun with which it's associated, and Mercury with which is its dispositor. So, the sun here doesn't play a significant role in the realm of relationships, but K2 invoking Mercury does. Mercury is in the sixth house. And remember, what I said earlier, the sixth house can be seen as the undoing of relationship because it is the 12th from the 7th. So the K2 period, mind you, that's 7 years long, but during those 7 years, it can sort of, raise these potential issues. Then he was running Saturn Bhukti at that time. And oops, now what do we see? Remember, Saturn is part of this pattern. The Moon-Venus mutual aspect with Saturn, which created what we call a passion combination with the two benefics, Venus and Moon, the female planets, and Saturn, one of these sort of, the bad boy planets, which arouses passion. And, Saturn, again, placed in the 12th house of bed pleasures, might suggest, the possibility of temptation, which, might have created a scenario for, an adventure outside the marriage. Let's leave it like that. At that time, back in 2016, Jada was running Rahu Sun. So have a look at her horoscope and we see, well, Rahu gives results for any planet that is with it. So that's Mars. And Mars here is the lord of her sixth house. That can represent some undoing of relationship. And Rahu also gives results for its dispositor, which is, Rahu's in Capricorn, so its dispositor is Saturn, and there is Saturn in the seventh house. So between Saturn, a malefic in the seventh, creating some hardship during Rahu's era, And then Rahu also giving results for Mars because of association. And Mars being the Lord of the sixth house can indicate pressure on the relationship and some undoing of the relationship as well, or erosion, whatever. Uh, she was in Sun Bhukti at the time as well too. And what do we see with that? Well, the sun is in, let's see, early degrees of an earth sign, so it's in its own nakshatra, Swan nakshatra. So the only thing we might say about this is sun is a malefic and it is afflicting Venus, which in her case is both the Lord of the seventh house and the Karaka for the seventh as well. So that represents, a problematic juncture in their lives. If we flash forward to today, back to Will Smith's chart, today he is now in Venus Dasha Moon Bhukti. And so if we look, we don't even need to look at their nakshatra lords in this case, because both Venus, the Dasha Lord, and Moon, the Bhukti Lord, are in the sixth house. And Venus, as I said earlier, is very powerful as an indicator for the undoing of relationship, because the sixth house is the the end of things, the dissolution of relationship. Now, I'm using those words. That doesn't mean that their relationship will end, but it's obviously at a stage where a public declaration of this sort, raises questions. And for Jada, during this period as well, she is now running Jupiter Saturn. So Jupiter occupies the first house and is this Dharma Lord. And maybe that prompts her to sort of stand tall, declare her truth, get on the right side of things in the sense of disclosure and honesty. Jupiter Dasha and Saturn Bhukti, and well, there we have Saturn in the seventh house, which is maybe just an honest admission that our relationship, our marriage, is not perfect, and we are dealing with that. Let the chips fall where they may. So there's where we stand. Now, we could ask separately from their individual horoscopes, how do they, fit in combination? And we can go back and forth looking at four critical factors in the horoscope, which are the ascendant, the moon, the sun, and Venus for each of them. You can, effectively create a 4x4 matrix and create 16 points of comparison for a very fulsome analysis of what's going on in the relationship. But the quick method is just to look at ascendant signs, moon signs, sun signs, and Venus signs. And if we do that, we find that for the most part, they are compatible. Will has a Taurus rising, Jada has Scorpio rising. Opposites, okay, that's fine. That's a complementarity. His moon is in Libra. Her moon is in Leo. Fire and air signs get along fine. So as far as the moon compatibility, that's good. With the sun, he has sun in Virgo. She too has sun in Virgo, and that's also an indicator of compatibility. But then we get to Venus. He has Venus in Libra. She has Venus in Virgo. Therein lies the seed of discontent with respect to physical affection. Everything from hand holding, hugging, kissing, up to sexuality. So this is the seed of discontent in this particular relationship. And, then we look what else is going on. So, there's a protocol for, the analysis in a horoscope for, how a person will fare in marriage. There are any number of things. There's this Ashkut calculation, which in their case, it's always 36 points maximum that can be derived, in any horoscope matching. Their score is 18.5 out of 36. Passing grade is, around 21. So, they're marginally below that. It's not the kiss of death, but, it's not as good as it ought to be as either. But anyway, so separately, we can look in a man's chart and look at Venus. So first thing, you would rather that it not be afflicted, especially by Saturn. Well, in Will's case, it is afflicted by Saturn. And this is kind of a virulent rogue Saturn as well, too, because it's debilitated. So that is a problem. The next thing is that you do not want Venus to be in the sign of a graha that owns a dushtana. So in this case, Venus actually is in its own sign and in a dushtana, so that too is problematic. Last but not least, you do not want Venus to be in the nakshatra of a graha that owns the a Trikashtana either. So in this case, what do we have here? Venus is in early degrees of an air sign. That's a Mars nakshatra. So Venus is in a Mars nakshatra. Mars is the lord of the 12th house. That's a Trikashtana. So on all three of these litmus tests, Venus afflicted by Saturn, Venus in the sign of a graha that owns a Trikashtana, Venus itself, Venus in the nakshatra of a graha that owns a Trikashtana, that's Mars. Ding, 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 that's all, problematic. Sorry, this is all for Will. Then we switch to Jada. For a woman, the process is similar, but in this instance, we will use in this instance Jupiter as indicator of the spouse for a woman. So here, what do we look for? Jupiter, is it afflicted by Saturn? The same rules prevail. You don't want Jupiter afflicted by any malefic, especially by Saturn. You don't want Jupiter in the sign of a planet that owns a Trikashtana, and you don't want Jupiter in a nakshatra that is ruled by a Trikashtana lord. So let's go through this. So here's Jupiter in Jada's chart, and it is afflicted. It is afflicted by Saturn. Okay, so that's problematic. Then Jupiter is in the sign of Mars, and Mars also owns a Trikashtana, the sixth. Finally, Jupiter, we need to look here at the degree. Jupiter is in 730 of Scorpio. That's a Saturn nakshatra. So back to the horoscope, look at the Trikashtanas. Saturn doesn't rule any of those. So in this case, Jupiter's position by nakshatra is not a problem. But it is by sign and it is by aspect from Saturn. So of the three factors, three litmus tests that we applied to Will, we got all three were negative, which implies, problematic issues in relationships, all of his own. And when we look at Jada's chart, we find with these three, litmus tests, 2 out of 3 are negative. And so that also implies, some degree of difficulty in terms of relationship. Put two such people together, where, the tests are largely negative, you are facing problems. You are facing problems when the horoscope individually suggests problems, from the point of view of Bhava Vichara, looking at the seventh Lord, the seventh house, and the Karaka for relationship. When you separately look at the status of Venus or Jupiter in a man or a woman's chart, and you look at the Ashtkut scores to see how they fare there. Overall, this is problematic all the way around, and so it suggests some degree of difficulty with respect to the relationship. So now it merely remains to be seen how will this play out. Currently, Saturn is transiting through Will's 10th house. At that time, it will aspect both the 7th house itself and the 7th Lord Mars. And then in Jada's chart, I haven't thought this through, but let me see where it's at. Saturn is in the 4th house, where it aspects, the first, and that's it. It doesn't aspect the seventh or the Lord of the seventh. It's opposed to her moon. So, mildly problematic for her, more sort of obvious for him, perhaps, that this represents, some end stage in their relationship. Obviously we can read into that her public statement about the status of their relationship. Okay, be that as it may, that's the way the cookie crumbles in this instance. Okay, so let me call a wrap on that. Okay, so I just want to make a few concluding remarks to all this. Analyzing relationships, it's not that easy. I mean, there's a lot involved in it, and yet it's so important. I've always told my students that if you can master the art of analyzing relationship potential and career potential in any individual horoscope, you will satisfy 90% of the needs of your clientele, because mostly that's why they're coming to see you. I mean, there are lots of other issues, creativity, spirituality, health, finances, etc. But relationships and career, again and again and again and again. So what I went through today is, sort of a tip of the iceberg kind of an analysis. And, we're handicapped to some degree with not being able to linger a little longer over these horoscopes, and also, for me to show you the Ashkut scores and, the 4x4 matrix that we can prepare using ascendant, moon, sun, and Venus, and, how to rate their, integration between two horoscopes. But you can enroll in the Parashara conference that's coming up online next month. And I'll be giving two presentations. One is a 2.5-hour lecture on relationship compatibility itself, where I will get into this protocol that I give an example of today with more preparation and a whole lot more examples to help people get familiar with how you do this. So I've put the date of that lecture, 17th of November, up on screen, along with the web link, the URL for that conference. And you can register for single lectures, whole days, or the entire conference. So just before I leave you, I will mention that on the 16th of November, the day before, I'll be giving a full day workshop. Well, I guess it amounts to something like 5 hours on the subject of career identification. And this also is another major topic. We are all interested in finding not only the right relationship, but also the right career for ourselves, for friends, for family, and particularly for clients. So I urge you, type that URL into your browser and go have a look at what's on offer. There are a lot of great astrologers, Jyotishis, who are convened for this online conference that will be, delivering their best. Okay, so thanks for tuning in. Come back again. Please subscribe. Bye for now.